If there's anything that people have told me that's stuck with me when I first started getting into Final Fantasy XIV, it's that Heavensward more than makes up for literally any shortcoming that A Realm Reborn could possibly have. That Heavensward is so good that it makes the entire rest of the journey worth it. That Heavensward is more than worth it and will absolutely convince you to buy the game more than any other little thing you could possibly imagine. Heavensward is so good that you should rush through A Realm Reborn and pay little attention to it besides a few key factors that ripple out into the rest of the series. A Realm Reborn is bad, but just get through it. It'll all be worth it in the end once you get to Heavensward. Now, rightfully so, this sounds like an over-exaggeration, but there hasn't been a shortage of people who have told me that A Realm Reborn is bad and to rush it, and that Heavensward makes it so worth it that it saves the entire experience. People believe in Heavensward's own hype, to the point that when I openly rejected the notion that A Realm Reborn wasn't worth it, people backpedaled on me, and we're just happy that I joined the cult. Oh, A Realm Reborn is fine, actually. It's just slow, they said, which is what they should have opened with. I guess they're lucky I had a friend who makes my heart meter go to the maximum with how much I want to dunk their catboy into a toilet, or else I probably wouldn't be here. That, and by the end of the experience, I was pretty hooked with no small critic going to the entirety of the Marauder and Warrior questline and Y'shtola's pretty face. Now, most people recognize that A Realm Reborn's slow pacing is both a blessing and a curse, because it's not only meant to get you from level 1 to level 50 while telling a cohesive story about the uprising of the Warrior of Light, it had to balance dealing with old players who were rightfully disappointed by 1.0 and had every reason to be skeptical. I don't need to tell you that A Realm Reborn had to win over a great many people before they'd buy into playing another expansion, but somehow the team did it, and we're all the more thankful for it. At the end of the day, every player found something to enjoy when it came to the beginning of the end of the 7th Umbral era and the start of the 7th Astral era. Don't worry about those terms, people in the audience that don't play Final Fantasy. Think of it like moving from 80s white people to 90s white people. So not much of a difference, but there's more colors on everyone's clothes, and that means something happened. Now, the rightful thing to put here would be to validate every single person that told me Heavensward is the best thing ever by going, yes, actually, it is Heavensward's story that kept me on the path to giving Square Enix my money, and while that's technically true, I'm not going to do that because I don't believe in giving people what they want. Instead, I just want to wax poetic on what I've been enjoying so far on my journey across Ishgard, because I don't want anyone misrepresenting me. I'm just some dude. Now, for those still here and haven't yet tried finding my address to beat me with an aluminum bat, I enjoyed the fuck out of Heavensward. But I need to pull back that discussion to first say that the 7th Astral Era questline, which is the intermediary between A Realm Reborn and the Heavensward one, it was the perfect follow-up to A Realm Reborn, and one that was clearly being written at the same time as Heavensward's main scenario, which is why everything flowed together basically seamlessly. Needless to say, I loved it a lot, and it shows that the writers really seem to like to do a constant rise and fall in their action and love to leave climaxes until the very end, where the fallout is something that the characters still have to ultimately deal with. I love it a lot. It doesn't help that because I'm playing the game as of patch 5.55, and I'm writing this 20 days before Endwalker goes public. Oh shit, that didn't age well! It doesn't help that because I'm playing the game as of patch 5.55, so me knowing that there's more to come just kind of accentuated how much I love how things go up and down and back up and down again. Like, not everything is ultimately very, very important, and we need that in an MMORPG. There's very clear splits where you could reasonably go fuck around with something like crafting and then come back right as rain, ready for the next major bit of story. If there's anything I enjoy a lot about Final Fantasy XIV as a whole, it's my own personal feeling of not always needing to be cramming story content down my throat. I'm not pursuing endgame content like I would in World of Warcraft, I'm trying to experience what the world has to offer. Heavensward starts properly after Roban fucking murders a potato like it's Asduf movie. We go to a new city and start doing as the Warrior of Light does, and start solving everyone's problems, while at the same time dealing with the aftermath of what went on during the post-Ultima Weapon questline, such as dealing with the affairs of the house you're a ward of, gaining the trust of high-ranking officials, stopping dragon racism, you know. A regular Tuesday. One thing that Heavensward does miles better than A Realm Reborn is focus itself on being just the Dragonsong War, as it's called, and making the right steps towards ending it, because it inevitably involves the original focus of something from A Realm Reborn, which is uniting the nations of Eorzea into one alliance. Ishgard is kind of dealing with a huge dragon-shaped problem right now. Of course they couldn't really commit until that was dealt with. And even during the part of the story that's literally called the Dragonsong War, which is the intermediary part between Heavensward and Stormblood, There's still some fallout from the end of Heavensward that needs to get dealt with in honestly the best trial I've ever participated in yet. Though, if you ask me, this part of the story around patch 3.3 should have been the climax of Heavensward and not what we got near the end of Heavensward as a whole. But that's just because I feel like it was the ultimate culmination of everything you've done up to this point. In retrospect, I feel like ending things off with one of the coolest primal slayings was the best move for that point in time that fixed a problem still left over from A Realm Reborn. As much as I would have loved for things to be rolled into one cohesive, comprehensive expansion, I recognize that this was probably the best they could have done without ruining the pacing. If anything, I'm just a petty asshole. The one thing you notice between patches and main expansions is that while there's a definitive narrative through line among everything, the patches are more like cleanup duty and prep work. Expansions proper are like the main rush at your restaurant, when you've got the people who can handle the rush at its worst at the place to deal with it, and the patches are the closing and opening crew. They're cleaning up after everyone made a giant mess in the Rising Stones, and preparing for what's next to come. However well that gets handled. If there's anything I can give Heavensward that hopefully ripples out into the rest of the expansions, it's that the pacing is off the charts. Dungeons come and go like they're nothing, and yet simultaneously they're impactful and extremely fun. The dedicated trials are the best they've ever been so far, with huge props going to the Vault. This was the dungeon that a friend pulled me into right after I switched data centers and told me that he's going to keep me alive, just grab every single enemy possible and don't look back. This is scary. I did it anyway. The pacing works as well as it does because the characters were cleaved from like 10 down to 3. For many reasons, a lot of the main cast had to leave the story at the end of 2.55, and you're basically stuck with only Alphino and Tataru as surviving members. Two characters who are conceivably at their lowest point that the players have seen in their lives thus far after A Realm Reborn patches conclude. Being in a new land with new characters and new problems essentially gave the writers a blank slate to work with. This leads everyone that isn't directly involved in more than 3 quests charmingly simple, and those who stay around for the entire experience more interesting to learn about and watch grow as people. It's also when we meet Estinian, and if you people in the audience didn't know, Estinian is kind of a big deal. And by big deal, I mean half of the player base wants Justinian to till they soup, and yet we still come back and ask for more. The other half of the player base are lovers of a different character who I know about, but I can't talk about yet because their existence is a spoiler. If there's anything I had to say I don't like about Heavensward, and really just MMO quests as a whole, sometimes I feel like certain objectives are redundant. Talk to certain characters, talk to others in the same location, go up and down and back around. The fetch quests are mostly gone, but, you know, there's still some of them left in the game for some jack-off reason. Another thing that I dislike, personally, is that because the maps in Heavensward are more vertical in nature, the map itself has a huge downfall. The map doesn't delineate between elevation levels if you could reasonably just fly between them. Like this part in the Dravanian hinterlands, there's a whole ass region underneath here that isn't shown on the map. And sure, you're meant to actually explore, but the map is here for a reason. It should probably tell you that there's an above and a below. One of the things that really stuck out to me as someone who has played Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy XIV is that they've went and made Dark Knights immediately more interesting compared to what they were in 4. Yes, I realized the point in 4 was to start off as a Dark Knight and show being a bad human before redeeming yourself as a Paladin, but the decision to make Paladin a base job from A Realm Reborn and Dark Knight an active choice for the player to make, they've already written a better job storyline than Cecil. This isn't to say I don't like Cecil, or that I don't like Final Fantasy IV as a whole, I'm just talking about the job specifics. I feel like making it an active decision to become a Dark Knight, especially after you see it contain a quote-unquote dark aura, you lean more into knowing what you do may be considered wrong by some and good by others, and that your people are necessary in this world in order to keep everything good and under the hood. Maybe I'm thinking about it too much, maybe I'm just weird and I appreciate gigantic swords and dark magic, maybe I'm easy to please, but there's something about choosing to become the darkness that pleases my Biggly Wiggly. I don't have much to say about Astrologian, because healing is scary, and being responsible for my friend's safety through keeping the your HP topped up is a responsibility that I am not ready for. That, and because I didn't get cool looking armor for healers at level 30, I look stupid and therefore I never want to touch the job. Machinist is fun because every single character in there is ready to open up a robot and make it their mechanical plaything, but they also don't want to get anywhere near other creatures that don't share the same absolute love of technology they do, and that's why they have guns! You guys may have noticed that I got a serious drip upgrade from the last video I made on the subject. This outfit you're seeing right now is one that everyone gets, but fuck you! I look amazing and nothing will change that. Going from warrior to dark knight to gunbreaker has really made me come to terms with the fact that job mechanics actually matter and can turn a brain dead role into something I love playing more than anything else. I've never been one for overloading mechanics onto players, so one of the things I'm trying to come to terms with is the fact that the newer jobs start you at such a higher level than others, which require an inherent amount of getting used to. If you roll up with someone in a dungeon and they're a level 15 marauder or pugilist, you know that they're more than likely learning the ideal rotation of moves, but going into other jobs, you just have to fuck around and find out what's the most effective. Sure, that's what striking dummies are for, but a striking dummy doesn't compare to actually running into a dungeon, getting your ass handed to you twice, watching your DPS leave the party because he's done dealing with your bullshit, and then finally learning the mechanics of the final boss. Is that just me? I'm sad that we're probably never going to get a trifecta of job introductions, but let's not kid ourselves here. We already have a metric fuck ton of options, and even though most of them are DPS, and you have to be a special kind of masochist to play one full-time. I love you, melee DPS players. Please stop being an asshole to me during the final steps of Faith for not knowing every individual mechanic by heart. Number ratings are lame as fuck. Heavensward is a Pokemon Gold Silver Crystal out of Black and White, if you include Dragon Song War. Pretty good, but not my favorite, but oh my god, it's such an improvement on what came before. I don't really have anything interesting to say anymore, so just give me the Jiboon Woe already. I'm on Ether Data Center on Genova, so I can play with people who aren't interested in having sex in Ulta every hour on the hour.
Jiboon!